The chamber's walls pulsed with a soft, rhythmic biolight, casting faint reflections on the polished obsidian table that stretched like a blade between the assembled delegates. 12 species represented the dominant voices of the galactic conclave, their envoys seated in perfect geometric symmetry around the edge. Each species had shed blood, wealth, or pride to earn a place here, none more recently than the humans. Ambassador Rhys Malloran, High Delegate of Terran Affairs, stood calmly. He wore the midnight black diplomatic uniform of the Earth Federation, lined at the collar with the silver sigils of peace, parity, and retaliation. He had been silent through 3 accusations, 2 motions for sanction, and a final thinly veiled threat from the Oran sovereignty. It was time to speak. The allegations concerning the deployment of Fleet Sigma to the Jathal border are noted, Malloran said, voice even, syllables exact. However, Earth asserts that its deployment was both legal under Conclave Charter Section 12 and necessary to secure sovereign colonists under duress. His counterpart from the Oran sovereignty, Lord Intendant Vrossic, leaned forward. Oran's angular carapace caught the biolight and scattered it into menacing slivers. Necessary? Vrossic rasped. You positioned a full carrier group within 1 light cycle of a restricted trade lane. That is not defense. That is deterrence. By intimidation. Correction, Malloran said, unfazed. It is deterrence by presence. If the sovereignty interprets the mere arrival of a human fleet as intimidation, perhaps the issue lies not in our presence, but in your perception of what follows from it. A low murmur stirred the chamber, not shock, but recognition. The humans, once considered a marginal species, had become precise in the art of lawful provocation. From the observer tier, Admiral Asha Thorne watched Malloran's performance with professional admiration. Every pause, every rebuttal, it wasn't just diplomatic. It was calculated. He was giving them what they feared most, a species that spoke in perfect accordance with the rules, but moved like a predator. Among them, she tapped the encrypted datapad. On her wrist, the words Black Ship Initiative, Stage 2, cleared blinked for half a second before fading. The Conclave didn't know it yet. Not the Orans, not the Shah, not the exiled Charniv Consortium. They thought humanity's fleets were the last threat. They needed to manage. They had no idea the sky was already opening. Lieutenant Commander Annika Vol read the telemetry again, slower this time. The sensor data didn't align with any known Oran or Shal energy signatures, yet the signal was unmistakably intelligent. Pulsed logic patterns, recursive intervals. Not a language, not yet but a question. What is it saying? Captain, Juno Cade asked, arms behind his back, gaze fixed on the translucent starfield projected at the helm. It's not transmitting a message in the conventional sense, Vol said, adjusting the focus filters. It's sending uncertainty, a kind OF probing frequency. Not hostile, not territorial, curious almost. Cade didn't flinch. And it's positioned exactly on the edge of Vector WRA9, the one corridor no conclave species dares to. Map, yes, sir. Where the Treaty of Orlith explicitly forbade transit. Vol looked up. But they're there. Someone's there. The black ship had not yet arrived. Kismet was advanced recon, a ghost ship drifting silent behind occlusion fields, so advanced they warped starlight. Even the Orans had no idea the humans had mastered 5th-gen null detection. Log the signal, Cade ordered. Don't respond. No noise. No indication we saw it. He turned toward the chamber's rear interface, where the ship's AI designation Auroch was projecting a silent scroll of data. ORAC, Cade said quietly. Cross-index the signal with known conclave member libraries, including pre-expansion. Shal and Charnhiv deep archives. Query acknowledged, the AI replied in a low, almost reverent tone. Preliminary correlation found. 0.0027%. Match to lost engine protocol fragments origin unknown. Not Orin, not Conclave. Cade nodded once. Tag it. Forward it encrypted to Black Ship Command under Protocol 10 Unmapped Sovereignty. He turned to his bridge crew. This is no longer a recon op, he said. It's a precursor analysis. The Black Ship won't just enter forbidden space. It will be welcomed. Deep beneath the surface of the Nexus, the Orons were watching. Vrasik stood alongside a Shal Observer General and two faceless delegates of the Charniv Remnant. The screen flickered with fragments of recovered signals from Vector WR, A9 scrambled emissions, gravitational anomalies, ghost transits that should not be possible. They are probing, the Shal delegate whispered. They move without warning, and they have not broken a single treaty. Vrasik's mandibles twitched. They learn too quickly. They conceal strength behind layers of legality. They invoke morality even when planning war. The Charniv delegate hissed. We laughed when they built ships like hammers. But they've begun to forge scalpels. Vrasik turned slowly toward the others. Then we must determine, he said, whether to parley before they reach the door we swore never to open, or close that door with fire. She moved without thrusters, without signature, without wake, an object more akin to an idea than a vessel. The Morn Spire, designation NX Omega-1, was never listed on any Terran registry. Its hull was blacker than void, fabricated with metamaterials. That rendered light itself uncertain. If you looked directly at it, the mind recoiled, registering it as absence rather than presence. Inside, silence reigned. Commander Elias Rourke stood before the inner projection wall, reading the non-Euclidean map that defined the edge of known space and the territories humans had now begun to disregard. He wasn't merely a fleet commander. He was the architect of Protocol 10. The Black Ship wasn't the next escalation in Terran defense, not it was the next philosophy in Terran interaction. Status, he said without turning. Lieutenant Thalier responded instantly. Signal path from Kismet confirmed. Hostile action, 0. Probabilistic echo from the origin point suggests a non-linear broadcast. AI consensus calls it an intelligent anticipation loop, a kind of reception signal, as if it's waiting. Rourke narrowed his eyes. Begin ignition sequence. Full. Phase shift, no advanced broadcast, Thalier blinked. Sir, that will place us inside forbidden space. We'll be in violation of treaties engineered by species who refuse to re-examine ghosts. Noted. Rourke stepped forward. We are not here to desecrate. We are here to validate. If the Conclave fears what lies beyond the rift, then we will understand it, not flinch from it. The ship began to hum not audibly, but in sensation. The kind of hum that rearranged inner ear equilibrium, that made visual depth seem momentarily false. In the observation core, 6 Terran AI cores linked into a single mesh. Black Ship crossing threshold, Thalier whispered. Phase shift. Complete. At 1407 Galactic Standard, the Morn Spire passed into uncharted sovereignty. The door opened. The Orans received the data stream 30 seconds later. Unfiltered, impossible, undeniable. They entered? The Shal Whisper analyst asked, eye stalks trembling. Not entered, Vrasik growled. They passed through. The Charniv delegate paced in slow rotations. They knew. They knew this was not empty space. That something waited. And worse, said Vrasik, his voice a cold hiss. They were invited. Inside the void, the stars looked closer. Not brighter, closer. The physics here didn't match the outer shell of reality. But the ship's systems were adjusting. Then, the signal came. Not a greeting. Not a warning. A location. A set of galactic coordinates, rotating in logic cubes nested 6 dimensions deep. Rourke exhaled slowly. They're guiding us. And the ship turned slowly to follow. The Morn Spire no longer traveled in any classical sense. Its navigation array showed coordinates that had never been charted, folding inward in impossible geometries, weaving through eddies of dark gravity and broken causality. Time pulsed unevenly. Some systems ticked forward. Others drifted. But the ship held course because it was being guided. Commander Elias Rourke studied the internal projections. Arms folded, face impassive. The coordinates they received from. The signal led not to a planet, nor a station, but to a lattice of broken megastructures suspended in subspace, each the size of a Terran moon. Their materials couldn't be identified. Their arrangement suggested logic, but more unsettling was this. Nothing was dead here. These constructs, said LT. Failure, voice quieter than protocol required. They're not derelict. They're asleep. Rourke said nothing. Instead, he walked forward, placed his palm on the ship's interface node, and opened the comms buffer. ORAC, he said. Translate the echo field we're receiving into coherent structure. I want to know what they're broadcasting. The AI responded after a moment. Translation partially successful. Root structure matches ancient pre-expansion Terran. Mathematics Fibonacci prime recursion, embedded in a four-dimensional harmonic. Primary message decoded as, you are not the first. But you are the first to ask. No one moved. Thalia broke the silence. Sir, do we respond? No, Rourke said. We show we understand. Begin low bandwidth waveform echo using our navigational memory, embedded with Earth's Terran construct history. Let them see we know what it means to build. The Shao Observer General interrupted protocol. This cannot go unanswered. The humans are not just violating treaties. They are interpreting them. They believe exploration and confrontation are not opposites, said Vrasik. They are recasting the galaxy's boundaries without ever firing a shot. The Charniv delegate's voice was metallic and measured. And our protocols are insufficient. They have built a weapon that operates through permission. A fleet that invades nothing but reveals everything. A new voice joined. It was calm, synthetic. And TERRAN. The transmission came directly from Admiral Isha Thorne. We are not seeking conquest, she said over the channel. We are seeking contact. But understand this. If we are met with aggression, we will not return silence. Earth does not invade, but we do not retreat. A heavy pause. Then Thorne added, and we are already inside. The lattice structures lit up one node at a time, each pulse synchronized with the black ship's trajectory. This wasn't chance. LT. Thalia spoke, all edging into her analytical tone. Sir, these constructs, they're waking up. Or recognizing us. Rourke watched the lights crawl across the sleeping network, forming a pattern far too symmetrical to be natural. This isn't an ancient civilization, he said quietly. This is a sealed protocol, waiting for a key. He turned toward the helm, and we may be the first species who ever thought we didn't already possess it. The core delegates of the conclave had not met at this level in over 7 centuries. Not since the Sin collapse. Not since a species violated interdimensional boundary law and ceased to exist across all timelines. Now they gathered again, summoned. Not by destruction, but by audacity. The Terrans have crossed the rift, said Vrasik. They have received and responded to a signal that predates the conclave. They did not cross it alone, said the Shao Observer General. They were invited. Invited by a machine logic we have forbidden ourselves from exploring. A structure that exists beneath causality. The Charnhiv delegates' photonic lenses shimmered. And you fear they will awaken something we long agreed to let sleep? No, said Vrasik slowly. I fear they will awaken something that answers back. The spire moved closer to the structure at the lattice's heart. It rotated slowly, a perfect sphere suspended in a cage of stationary subspace ripples. No emissions, no defense fields. And yet, the spire's sensors registered density beyond neutron matter. Something existed within it, anchored not to space, but to pattern. Commander Rourke stood before the ship's cognitive interface, face lined with resolve. "Auric," he said, "calculate probable function of the central core." Pause. Then the AI responded, softer than before. "Function unknown. Structure appears to house a recursive meta-language, engine capable of rewriting its own logic structure based on observation of foreign input." Rourke's brow tightened. "Meaning?" "Meaning," Auric said. "It changes itself to understand. You. It does not interpret. It adapts." Thalier stepped forward. "Sir, energy buildup detected. Originating not from the sphere, but from us." "What kind of buildup?" Rourke asked, his voice suddenly sharper. "Feedback loop. It's mimicking our drive field. Power spiking along harmonic bands, sir. It's mirroring our identity back at us." Rourke exhaled. "It's not just watching. It's responding." "Begin mobilization," Razik ordered. "All second-wave vessels. Assemble at the border of Vector WRA-9. Open aggression will break the Conclave Accords," the Shah warned. "The humans have fired no weapons. Their fleet is a weapon," Razik growled. "They do not need to strike. They merely need to understand something we were never brave or foolish enough to face." At precisely 1704 galactic mean, the central sphere released a single pulse of light. It struck nothing. It radiated nowhere, but across the ship's system screens froze. Charts blurred. Navigation inverted dot then. A voice. Not synthetic. Not natural. Not alien dot, it simply said, "Why do you carry silence as a shield?" No threat. No demand. A question dot and Rourke, unblinking, answered aloud, "Because we were taught to fear what we did not understand." The sphere pulsed once more dot and opened. The moment the sphere opened, Des Moines Spire's inertial dampeners strained under forces that could not be named. The crew felt no jolt, yet the stars outside had shifted. Or perhaps it was space-time itself that had rethreaded. In the observation dome, light no longer behaved with obedience. It refracted around nothing. An absence cast shadows. Commander Rourke remained still. Within the open sphere was no interior chamber, no mechanical core. It revealed instead a suspended manifold of data symbols in recursive chains, orbiting a singular crystalline lattice that shifted shape every 3 seconds. It was alive in concept, not matter. Lieutenant Thalier's voice was barely above. A whisper. "Sir, this is not a weapon." "No," Rourke said. "It's a question engine." "Explain?" "It doesn't destroy threats. It asks them why they exist, and then it answers the reason for them." Before Thalier could respond, Auric interjected. "Commander, multiple energy spikes inbound. Vessels non-Terran. 9 Oran dreadforms. 4 Shah Ark Riders. 2 Charnhiv war carriers. Vector WR, and 9 perimeter breached." Rourke turned calmly. "Broadcast tight beam message. Instruct them. Hold formation outside the structure's phase veil. Do not fire. Do not provoke." "Sir?" "They're charging weapons," Thalier warned. Rourke's voice was iron. "So let them fear what they see. We will not fear what we know." Oran dreadforms moved in precise orbit, their hulls bristling with magnetosphere arrays and quantum disruptors. The Shao ships trailed behind, their vessels curved like crescents, resonating with passive field harmonics designed for containment. "They have entered a construct," reported a Shah lieutenant, translating distorted signals from the void. The Charnhiv admiral's voice grated through the open channel. "They are interfacing. Not looting. Not attacking. Interfacing. Vrosik, commanding from the Auron flagship, watched the projections of the humans' behavior. No shields up. No weapons deployed. No threats issued. Yet they stood at the center of a force no other species had ever dared awaken. This, Syed, is more dangerous than any ore doctrine. The structure now rotated, not mechanically, but logically. Patterns looped and folded until their meaning emerged not through interpretation, but through recognition. It spoke again. This time, in a voice that mirrored Rourke's own. You feared the galaxy would test your strength. So you prepared weapons. Yet the true test is whether you would stop when strength was not required. The command deck fell silent. Then the AI whispered, Commander, the structure is preparing a final broadcast. Origin, galactic core. Trajectory, all known channels. Are we the source? Rourke asked. Auric answered slowly. We are the amplifier. A signal erupted. Not a call to war. Not a threat. A philosophical challenge. A single phrase, translated into thousands of tongues, etched itself into every receiver, every nav terminal, every archival core. Adapt not to conquer. Adapt to comprehend. He's turned the artifact into a beacon, said the Shal Observer General. He's changing the conclave not with force, but with truth. They used diplomacy to reach the edge, Vrosik spat. And now they wield understanding as a weapon. No, the Charniv. Delegate corrected. Not a weapon, a mirror. The construct's lattice collapsed into itself, its purpose fulfilled. A silent bloom of white spiraled inward, and the spire held position until the void stilled. We just echoed an idea older than the conclave itself, Rourke said, watching the stars reorder themselves in quiet response. Failure stepped beside him, and if they reject it? Rourke finally allowed a small, rare smile. Then they'll face something far more dangerous than conquest. He turned toward the stars. They'll face a species that understands what it's becoming. The briefing chamber was silent as Admiral Asha Thorne entered, the doors hissing closed behind her. Every senior commander from the Federation's Outer Ring, Intelligence Directorate, and diplomatic corps had gathered. None spoke. All had seen. The transmission. The words, adapt not to conquer. Adapt, comprehend. Glowed on the central display, etched like doctrine into history. I presume, said General Halvik of the Outer Defense Chain, his voice calm but edged with warning, that Commander Rourke acted with authorization? Thorne took her seat. At the head of the table, he acted with protocol. The table stirred. You mean Protocol 10 was never about invasion, said Director Velen of Strategic Analysis. It was about amplification. Correct, Thorne said. It was never a strike fleet. The black ship was always a mirror. It reflects the nature of whatever it encounters. In their paranoia, the conclave saw aggression. In truth, we offered them a test they couldn't refuse. Why broadcast at all? Halvik asked. We've just painted a target on humanity. Thorne folded her hands, because now they have to answer, not to us, to their own people, to the factions within their species who've long questioned the dogmas they were told to obey. The sovereignty was no longer laughing. Vrosik stood in darkness, surrounded by ancient war monitors and predictive engines. The data was clear. Since the Terran broadcast, over 900 known colonies had received internal requests for interpretation. Debate forums had surged. Dissident voices in monitored species now quoted Terran philosophy not to provoke, but to propose. They've altered the balance of obedience, the first strategos whispered. Without a single kinetic strike. Vrosik responded coldly. They used a weapon we discarded centuries ago, curiosity. They must be isolated, another said. Before this becomes irreversible. Vrosik paused. No, not isolated. His gaze turned to a volumetric projection of Earth, glowing in blue and green. They must be understood. Space folded as the black ship traced a path back toward Terran space, but not the one it had come through. The structure had given it another way. A corridor through regions long thought unreachable, bypassing known hyperspace gates. Lieutenant Thaler stood beside Rourke at the main deck. "They'll come for us," she said. "Yes," Rourke answered. "Some with questions, others with fleets." Rourke gave a small nod. "We're prepared for both." She studied the nav map. "Do you think they'll understand what we found?" "No," Rourke said. "They'll understand what they are becoming. That's the greater threat. And if they react with force, then they will learn," Rourke said calmly, "why we still built ships with armor and teeth." A lone monk scientist, ancient and near-deaf, stared at the Terran phrase repeated on his terminal. He watched it over and over, not with fear but resonance. He whispered, "They spoke not of conquest nor faith, but of choice." And for the first time in 500 Shalian cycles, he opened a channel to the Forbidden's Library's -unauthorized.2, redacted, from redacted subject. Terran signal contagion spread models now show 38% of non-Terran outer settlements referencing Terran ethical dialectics. 12% are forming local governance responses without central directive. Contagion is ideological dot summary. The humans did not build a fleet to win war. They built a fleet to end monopoly on meaning. The data didn't lie. Across the member systems, something had begun to shift, not in the form of uprisings, not in violence or riots, but in reflection. For a civilization as vast and old as the Conclave, this was far more dangerous. Subtle ideological rebellion had begun to root within academic councils, military ethics review boards, and even among low-tier navigational guilds. The Terran phrase adapt to comprehend had become a litmus test, a shibboleth. If you quoted it, you weren't Terran, but you might no longer be Conclave. "They deployed an idea," said Analyst Executor Jal in a voice hushed by gravity. "And worse, it is scalable." Beside him, Vrasik stood motionless, arms locked behind his back. "Have the humans issued further statements?" "None. Silence. Their fleet has returned to Terran jurisdiction, but their silence is strategic. The galaxy cannot unhear what they said." Giol looked toward the suspended holomap of Earth and its surrounding orbital defenses, beacons of deterrence. Yes, but also of clarity. Their weapon was not the black ship, he said slowly. It was what they chose not to do with it. "Ambassador." Rhys Malloran stood before a Shawl emissary. No press. No cameras. Only direct eyes and direct words. "You say you came for clarification," Malloran said. "Yet your council forbade all contact after our transmission." The Shawl emissary flicked a membrane thoughtfully. "Prohibition is one thing. Curiosity is another." Malloran tilted his head. "Then ask what you came to ask." The emissary hesitated, then spoke. "Why did you not claim the structure?" Malloran answered evenly. "Because claiming it would have proven we didn't understand it." The Shawl blinked in that slow reptilian rhythm of contemplative pause. "And what would you have done if it had fired upon you?" Malloran smiled without warmth. "We would have survived and learned, but our goal was not conquest. It was confirmation." "Of what?" "That our values still function beyond the atmosphere of Earth." Vrasik stood alone before a console running simulations. All of them showed the same outcome. Militarily, the humans were still beatable. Their fleets were not infinite. Their colonies still few, but politically, philosophically, they had achieved something nearly irreversible. They had made the idea of centralized galactic authority optional. Even species who despised humanity now quoted their principles in defense of their own reforms. Vrasik leaned forward. "Prepare exploratory diplomatic response," he ordered his adjutant. "To Earth?" "No, to the species that are listening to Earth." The adjutant hesitated. We could destabilize entire sectors. Yes, Vrasik replied. But the humans just taught us. Stabilization without consent is decay by another name. Morm. Spire. Dry dock orbit. Earth's hidden moon installation. Erebus vault. She no longer glowed. She no longer pulsed with interdimensional feedback. The Morn spire waited silently in orbit, her hull absorbing stars, her presence still debated in classified meetings. Commander Rourke sat within the debriefing room, not bound, not decorated, simply observed. Director Velen entered with a secure tablet and placed it on the table. "Congratulations," she said. "You've made Earth the most feared species in the galaxy." Without a single invasive act, Rourke looked up. Then, "They were watching closely. They were watching the wrong things," she replied. "Now they're listening. And that's worse." Rourke didn't smile. "Good. That means they're learning." Velen leaned forward. "So what is the black ship now?" Rourke's answer was quiet. A mirror, still, and heavier now, because it has shown what it reflects. The Volaran X had once hosted peace negotiations between species that barely acknowledged each other's sentience. It had survived assassination attempts, ideological schisms, and 6 rival translations of the word justice. Yet never had it held its breath the way it did now. The center table. For the first time in Conclave history, a Terran envoy had not been summoned by sanction or accusation. They had been invited. Ambassador Rhys Malaran's posture was unchanged shoulders, squared, chin slightly lowered, hands unmoving on the table surface. He understood the calculus behind posture better than most military tacticians understood war. He didn't occupy space. He anchored it. High Arbiter Zess of the conclave chair, ancient and bone-thin beneath his glimmering robes, addressed him in the ceremonial tongue. "Your people," Zess said slowly, "have issued a non-doctrinal, philosophical broadcast that has now altered 47 member species' internal cultural protocols." Malaran inclined his head. "We've been monitoring the responses. Most appear constructive." "That is not the point," Zess rasped. "You've moved us across a threshold." Malaran net his eyes. "Then perhaps the threshold was already there. We only walked toward it." Murmurs echoed. The Shal nodded. The Charnhiv delegate leaned forward. Even the Orans remained silent. Then Zess asked what no one had dared put to words until now. "What is it that humanity wants?" Malaran's answer came without a pause. To no longer be treated as an exception, but as an example. "We adapt. Not to dominate, but to demonstrate what survival with meaning can look like. And if the galaxy does not follow?" Malaran's voice cooled. "We will not force you to join us." A pause. "But we will not let you stop those who choose to walk forward." Vrasik stood before the mirrored projection of Terran influence maps. They no longer depicted territorial holdings or military strength. They charted ideas, movements, shifts in cultural syntax, legal discourse, even shared myth. An under-officer approached, mandibles tense. "Shall I prepare disinformation routes? Psychological dampening protocols?" "No," Vrasik said slowly. Turning, "Prepare something more dangerous." The officer stiffened. "More dangerous?" "Prepare listening teams." The first alien emissary to visit since the Black Ship's return was not from the Conclave. It was from a minor, unaffiliated civilization known for silence, retreat, and neutrality. They arrived without translation protocols. And yet, when they stepped into the observation dome and looked upon Earth's swirling blue marble, they spoke. A single phrase in clean Terran English. "Show us how you decided not to become monsters." Commander Rourke, summoned from reserve status for the meeting, answered plainly, "We never decided that." He turned to face the visitor. "We decided to keep deciding." At 0 o'clock Galactic Median, a joint message was transmitted from a coalition. Of 16 Species 3, Conclave aligned, 13 previously unaligned. Let it be known, the age of doctrine is over. We choose dialogue. Let those who adapt do so not in fear, but in clarity, and let the Terrans be known not as rebels, but as the threshold species, the first to build a weapon made of questions. There was no map for this place. No name, no claim, no war fought to own it. Here, gravity drifted like fog, time bent inward, and in its stillness one vessel lingered, not out of lost course, but by chosen stillness. The Morn spire waited, not because it needed to, but because it understood. Now, not all movement was progress, and not all silence was surrender. Inside, Commander Elias Rourke stood alone in the observation dome, surrounded by the absence of threat, noise, and witness. His voice broke the silence. Auric, status report. The ship's AI responded without the usual formality. It had changed, evolved, as all Terran systems were designed to. Status. All Conclave observers have disengaged pursuit. Passive monitoring remains in 82 sectors. No hostile activity recorded. Ideological diffusion continues. 16 new diplomatic accords ratified. Resistance fragmented, rhetorical, and increasingly irrelevant. And the signal? The core construct remains silent. Its function complete. Rourke nodded once. What do you suppose it was waiting for? A species, Auric said. That asked the right question without demanding an answer. Ambassador Malloran addressed not just Terran citizens, but delegates from 89 worlds, colonies, and emerging civilizations. Not one of them interrupted as he spoke. We did not win a war, he said. We did not impose a model. We invited reflection. His voice remained composed, stripped of triumph, and what echoed back was not worship, nor obedience. It was recognition. The conclave had not dissolved, but it had reshaped. Doctrines became frameworks. Edicts became conversations. Treaties became questions written, with options for change. At the center of its great seal, once etched with the icon of stasis and unity, a new emblem had been added, a single dark silhouette, the Morn spire, surrounded by orbiting symbols in flux. A motion passed, not with votes, but with shared breath. Let the species who changed the sky be known not for fire, but for the silence that followed, and for the questions they left us brave enough to ask. Voice log, Commander Elias Rourke expected resistance. We prepared for containment. We encountered neither. What we found was an answer with no voice, because we finally asked without needing to hear ourselves echoed back. Maybe that's what it means to cross the threshold, not to conquer what's beyond, but to leave behind what we used to be, and wait, in peace, for the galaxy to decide what it wants to become.